Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome back because today I'm going to give you guys a spoiler review for the newly released film in the MCU that caps off Phase 4 Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I am going to give you guys a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen this movie yet, go watch in theaters and then see yourself right back here because this is the entirety of the video. I'm not going to hold back on things that play out in this movie, so this is your only warning if you haven't seen the movie yet. And with that said, let's get started. Right off the bat, the movie opens on a very sad note where we see Shuri is calling out to Bost and she's trying to find a cure to save T'Challa because he is suffering from an illness and is on the verge of death. And we see Shuri and the people try to do whatever it takes to find this cure, and it seems that they're trying to recreate the heart-shaped herb that Killmonger burned all of in the first Black Panther movie, and it turns out years later they're still trying to find ways to bring that heart-shaped herb back because it has the powers of a Black Panther. And then as she continues to try to find ways to save him and clone the herb, Ramonda shows up and tells Shuri that T'Challa is with the ancestors now, signaling that T'Challa has passed away. And right from there, it's a very devastating way to kick off this movie because of the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman and how his death shocked the world and his 4-year battle of colon cancer. It really put Ryan Coogler and the crew in a really bad place with this movie where they lost their lead star. They had an original idea for Black Panther 2 already completed with T'Challa dealing with the fact that he's been gone for 5 years and him trying to still be king of Wakanda, and now that can't happen because of his passing. They were so stuck in a situation that was difficult for them to pull off, but they did pull it off really well with this movie. And right after that, we have the funeral scene for T'Challa where Shuri, Ramonda, Okoye, and the rest of Wakanda celebrates the life of T'Challa while also mourning the loss of their king. And we see his casket, and we see the Civil War helmet from Black Panther's suit in Captain America Civil War. And so as just seeing Shuri and them mourn and feel devastated with the loss of T'Challa, and we hear Ludwig Göransson's ancestral plane theme from the first movie make a return in this scene right here, and he delivers another fantastic score with this movie. He's done a really great job in general. I love his work for Mandalorian, Tenet, Black Panther, and he's doing it yet again with Wakanda Forever. And right from the get-go, it gives you a really different feeling, especially because when you hear the ancestral plane in this scene, it makes you feel very emotional and sad, and that's what I got out of it, especially because not only are they tributing Chadwick Boseman, but they're also tributing the character T'Challa because he has died in the MCU. And so that is our opening. I think it's a really strong and powerful way to kick off this movie, right with the feels being hurt, and so as just letting us get an idea on what the rest of this movie is going to be like. It's also a very smart move that rather than play the normal Marvel Studios intro with the theme and just seeing all these other heroes, that they use the version of Chadwick Boseman, which is, I'm pretty sure, what they have for Black Panther on Disney Plus if you were to go watch it there. So bringing it back for this movie, I think, is a very smart way, especially with no theme. It's very silent. It feels very emotional, especially just because it happens right after the funeral scene. And it just lets you just sink in how this movie just opened and just mourn Chadwick Boseman rather than play the traditional Marvel intro you'll find anywhere else. And so that, I think, is a very nice touch. We have a new character in this movie with Dominique Thorne starring as Riri Williams, aka Ironheart. This is a character that I was very curious to see exactly what the movie is going to do with her, especially with having Namor, the side characters of Black Panther, being elevated to being the main characters of the movie. And so I was wondering, what is her role in this story? And I was wondering, is it just set up for her show next year, or is there going to be something else entirely? And I really liked her a lot in this movie. While she does at times feel like a plot device in the same veins as America Chavez and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I really like what they do with Ironheart in this movie. I love Dominique's performance, how she plays off of everybody, and how she serves as the comedic relief character. She's a 19-year-old intelligent student from MIT who's thrust into the story, especially with her metal detector machine getting in the hands of the CIA, and they're trying to protect her from Namor and all these other characters who are trying to come after her. And I really like what they do with her in the story. Her Ironheart suits are really cool. The chase sequence with Shuri, Okoye, and Ironheart, really well done. The action sequences are really a lot better here than they are in the first movie. And what they do with her in the end, I think, is really nice, and I'm really excited for her show next year on Disney Plus, especially after this movie, because I really like what we got of Ironheart in this movie, and so is her dynamic with Shuri, and I cannot wait for a show next year. And Ryan Coogler is an executive producer for that show, and that makes me even more excited. While we have Ironheart as a new character, we are also introduced to Namor and the underwater nation of Talokan, and they pronounce Namor as Namor in this movie, especially with his Aztec and Mayan origins in this movie. And I love Tenoch Huerta as Namor. I think he's very charming and charismatic when he needs to be, but he also does a really good job at coming off as very despicable and sinister. And he does pose as a really dangerous threat for our characters that really is no joke whatsoever in this movie. He can just turn on you and go ballistic in an instant. And I really like what they do with him in this movie. He's very powerful, strong, and capable of holding his own and being a very capable threat of a lot of stuff that can go down. But I also love that his character motivation isn't just, I want to turn on the surface world and cause destruction because I'm evil and I want to do so. But rather, he does this because he has no love for the surface world. When he was young and he lost his mom, seeing that there are colonizers who have enslaved the Mayan people, and Namor is disgusted and angered by this, and then he and a few of the members of the nation of Talokan just start a rebellion, which leads to a lot of destruction and death. And we see how that really triggered Namor into developing his hatred for the surface world. And so as being similar in the veins of Killmonger, where he's doing this because the world just took away Killmonger's dad and he wants to become king of Wakanda and ship out all of the vibranium all across the world so that they can start revolutions all over the world. And here it's like this time he's doing this because of how he saw what happened to the Mayans back then, and now he wants to get revenge on the surface world for that. And I really like what they do with him, especially seeing how they depict him as the Cuckoo Khan, the feather serpent god, and really make him a formidable character. And I think the actor does a really good job at portraying this character. And he's a very compelling antagonist in this story. And I really like what they do with him. And so as just seeing how well designed the costumes and even just the visuals for the underwater nation of Talokan look incredible. It feels very authentic, real, and that they actually did film this movie underwater. And I really like how Ryan Coogler and the crew were able to bring it to life. It's very well done, and every time I saw it, which I've seen twice, on the big screen, I was mesmerized by how cool Talokan looks from the design and how we see what Namor has done for his people and seeing the way of life for the nation. I think they really depict that really well, trying to make it as historically accurate to the Mayan civilization and Namor, and make sure that it's not an unfaithful adaptation of it, because they're switching things up with Namor for the better, if you ask me. And I really like what they do with him in this movie, and so as how at some point Shuri and they don't agree, and Namor decides to go to war against Wakanda because he told him, we can be allies, we can rise up against the surface world, but if you turn against me and you don't join me, I'm coming for you first. And then we have an incredibly well done sequence with the flooding of Wakanda, where Namor and the nation of Talokan, they flood Wakanda, and it's just going completely downhill, and we see Namor cause a lot of destruction. He's really did a number on M'Baku, and so as seeing Namor do this as a message for Wakanda that if you turn on me, I'm coming for you. And this is just a taste of what they can do. And especially with how he drowns Queen Ramonda, which was very emotional because of all the stuff she had to go through in this movie. That was a very sad way to go out, but she died saving Riri Williams, which makes her go out as a hero. And so that is a very incredible sequence that really just blew my mind how they made it pulled off. And so as a whole, I really loved what this movie does with Namor, and I'm really excited to see what they do with him in the rest of the MCU, because I'm really hoping that this is not the last time and only time we're going to see Namor in the MCU. Queen Ramonda is one of the best characters in this movie, and Angela Bassett delivers one of the best performances in the film. She's so terrific and phenomenal as a character in this movie, with her line delivery and her speeches and her scenes are some of the best scenes in this entire movie, and seeing how authentic and how I can really connect with her character here, especially how she's dealing with the loss of T'Challa, how she's trying to protect Shuri and the nation of Wakanda now that she's the queen of the nation, and how the United Nations is trying to steal vibranium from them because they're afraid that vibranium is too dangerous to be held in the hands of one nation, and how that makes her feel. And now that Namor rose as a threat, now that he is known to her and Shuri and the rest of Wakanda, and how that affects her. And so as just what happens to her over the course of this movie, it's very well depicted here. She is one of the best characters in the movie. I love what they do with her. And so as seeing scenes where she strips Okoye of her title because of how she lost Shuri to the underwater nation of Talokan when she, Ironheart, and Shuri trying to get away from the FBI in Wakanda Forever earlier on in the movie, and she removes her title. And I love how she manages to get it to tie back to how Okoye sides with Killmonger only because we thought T'Challa was dead and she's loyal to the throne rather than loyal to Queen Ramonda and them, and how that really comes back against Okoye here. And Okoye is also fantastic in this movie, and seeing her in this position. And I really like how this does feel like a very worthy sequel to the first Black Panther, where while the movie was set so many years before Wakanda Forever, it still continues a lot of the stuff from the movie and has some nice continuity ties to it. And I really like how it plays out as a really well done sequel to Black Panther, with character decisions that happen there and stuff that plays out and how it affects this movie, especially with T'Challa having revealed Wakanda to the entire world in the mid-credit scene of the movie, and how that affects the world in Wakanda Forever. I really love how they depict this here, and especially seeing how heartbreaking it was to watch Queen Ramonda die when Namor throws underwater bombs at the palace and drowns her. And while she dies, she does save Riri Williams from death, and I think she died a hero. But it was so tragic because we lost T'Challa, but we also lost Ramonda in this movie, and it's just so gut-wrenching to watch it play out because of all the stuff she's gone through and how it affects Shuri and the rest of the characters, and how it's just a really sad scene to really amp up the drama and the stakes of the film. Shuri is pretty much the main character of this movie, and Letitia Wright delivers another outstanding performance in this movie. This is her at her best, as Shuri is the most she's ever been given in terms of material to work with, and we see her go from being the smart, funny, likable side character in the first movie to being where she is in this movie, where ever since she lost T'Challa, she became cynical. She turned away from Boss, and now she cares about science and just trying to make advancements, and believes that Black Panther is just a relic of the past. And how that plays out with her over the movie, especially with Namor, her trying to find Ironheart, and so as just the rising threat of what is at stake here. I really love Shuri in this movie, especially just scenes where we watch Shuri and Namor travel throughout Talokan, and we see her observe the way of life of these people, and just seeing the underwater nation is beautiful, especially with the song Con la Brisa playing over the scene, which I think is a beautiful song. And so as watching Shuri take the next steps and her being revealed to be the next Black Panther, and look at the marketing. I always had a feeling Shuri was going to be the next Black Panther, even if they were trying to be very mysterious about it, because she's been Black Panther in the comics. Looking at the story that played out, it had to be her. And I love how her arc in this movie plays out, and just in general. And I love how her arc plays out in the film, where you see her be very cynical by the start of this movie, and how Namor pops up and how she's trying to find Riri. And then she explores Talokan with Namor and being back in Wakanda, and now she lost her mother, and how that pushed her over the edge, and now she wants revenge against Namor for taking her mother away from her. And I really love the scene in this movie where she finally recreates the herb, because the herb gives the Black Panther their powers, and I was wondering, how are they going to bring the herb back, because it gives the powers of a Black Panther, their abilities. And I love how they're able to bring that back in this movie and how that plays out. And then we see her go into the ancestral plane, and we see not Ramonda, but Killmonger in this movie, and that really surprised me. I love Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. He's one of the best villains in the MCU, and he's one of the standouts of the first Black Panther movie, so I was really happy and surprised to see Michael B. Jordan reprise his role as Eric Killmonger. And so as just that scene they both had in the ancestral plane with how it's like, what's Shuri gonna do? Is she gonna be noble like T'Challa, or is she going to get things done like Killmonger? And how she's on that fine line of being either on the side of T'Challa or going down the revenge path like Killmonger did. And I really like how, with that, her arc is playing out in a similar fashion as T'Challa in Captain America Civil War, with how he lost his father in the UN bombing and he blamed Bucky for it. He wants to kill Bucky and take any chance he gets at it. And then he finds out Zemo's the one that did it. And it culminates with his arc in that movie being he finds Zemo, and rather than kill him where he stands, perhaps where he's sitting,
vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them. I'm done letting it consume me.
and it's a really powerful way to wrap up his arc in that movie. And I love how it very much parallels to Shuri's arc in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and how she ends up becoming Black Panther. And I love that her suit, really cool, really well designed. And it also has some yellow in there, and it really feels like it has some shades of both T'Challa's suit in there, but also Killmonger's as well. And seeing her become the new Black Panther that Wakanda needs, and her talk with M'Baku, how it's like, I want to get revenge on Namor, I'm going to kill him where he stands. And so Wakanda takes a really big ship on the water, and so they can have their battle with the nation of Talokan. And the action sequences have improved a lot more here than in the first movie. I think they're a lot better. They're a lot more clear to see, and the visuals themselves, I think, are even better in the film. And I really love seeing the Dora Milaje, the Jabari team up alongside one another and take on the underwater nation of Talokan here. It's really cool to see them fight. And even though they're doing it out in the middle of nowhere, I still thought it was really cool nonetheless. And so as seeing Shuri take on Namor, where they go to this beach and they fight. Namor has the drop on her. He's beating her up very brutally and harshly, and he stabs her with the spear right through her stomach. And that was really shocking to me that they did that. It was a very violent fight. It's one of the MCU climaxes where we really see the hero get beaten down really badly, which I want to see more of. I want to see more of the protagonist in the MCU get beaten up to that degree and suffer through that much injuries. I think they do a really good job in the third act, and then it all culminates where she gets up, she finally gets the power to stop Namor, and we see that right before she can try to kill Namor, you finally see Queen Ramonda in the ancestral plane to tell Shuri, show them who you are, and she drops the spear, and she spares Namor, but he yields in the process, meaning that Wakanda and Talokan, they're done fighting, and I think that's a really powerful way to end off this movie, rather than she kills Namor, being like Killmonger, but rather she shows how noble she can be, and really wins the day in the end. And so as Namor, Shuri, they take that Wakandan ship, and they decide to end the battle, and they both go home in peace. I really like that a lot. It's a very powerful way to end the movie with them. And with Shuri, now that she's the new Black Panther, she's sent Ironheart back to the US with no worries about the FBI trying to catch her, and going off to Haiti where Nakia lives. And I really love Nakia in this movie. And this movie does a really good job at utilizing female characters in this movie, because you've got Shuri, Nakia, Okoye, Queen Ramonda, Ironheart. I really love how the movie handles all these characters. It does a really good job at making these side characters in the first movie become main characters, and they held their own very well in the movie. And so as how well they utilized M'Baku still. And then we have that same location where we have the challenge day in the first Black Panther, but M'Baku shows up instead of Shuri, and it seems like M'Baku's going to fight for the throne, and I'm really curious to see what they do there in the sequel to Black Panther when that happens. And we see Shuri goes to Nakia's home and she burns the ceremonial funeral robes that she had at the beginning of this movie. And you start to see flashbacks of T'Challa in the first Black Panther movie. And I thought that was really emotional. It's a beautiful way to wrap up this movie, where she's now finally able to properly grieve T'Challa's death, and then the movie ends. And I think that's a very beautiful way to wrap things up before the main credits rolled. There's one storyline here that I think feels very out of place in this movie, and that is the storyline between Everett Ross and Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. That whole storyline didn't really add very much to the movie. It just drags the middle a bit, because the only scene in the movie where I feel like it was necessary to have Everett Ross here in was the first scene he is in the movie, where he tells Okoye and Shuri that this scientist they gotta find is a girl. She's just a kid. And that's it, because after that, you have him just there for exposition and just having that little storyline with Val. It didn't really add too much to the movie. Like, maybe that's trying to set up something for later with Wakanda at odds with the United Nations, but I didn't see much of a purpose in it. It just feels like it's there just to have them in this movie, and we see her arrest Everett Ross because of how Everett Ross is trying to get info for Wakanda and help them out, and she feels that that's treason against him, and then Okoye breaks him out in the end. And so I'm wondering what they're going to do with Everett Ross in the MCU after this. And he is going to be in Secret Invasion next spring with Samuel L. Jackson, so I'm curious to see his role there. But as a whole, that whole storyline just didn't really do that much for me. So unless it does something for the future of the franchise, I thought it just wasn't really that necessary for this movie. Last but not least, we have the end credit scene. There's only a mid-credit scene and not an end credit scene that plays at the end. There's no setup for future MCU projects there like most MCU movies would do, but rather we go back to where the movie ended with Shuri out on the shore of Haiti, where Nakia lives, and we see that Nakia has a kid with her. And that really started to have me wondering exactly what they just pulled off. It made me think Nakia has a son, and then it turns out the son is the son of Nakia and T'Challa, and his name is Toussaint. And if you look at the movie, you really pay attention. You actually saw him earlier on when you first meet Nakia in this movie, and he tells Shuri that his Wakandan name is T'Challa. And that really hit me in the feels. I was really happy they actually decided to have in the MCU, have T'Challa have a kid in the MCU, and that it turns out that at some point over the past couple of years, T'Challa and Nakia secretly had a son, and they kept him in private, to where they kept him away from the Wakandan throne because they didn't want to burden him with all of that weight on his shoulders. And so I thought that was a very powerful ending. It was really moving. And so I was just seeing Shuri finally meet T'Challa's son for the first time, and I really like how it ends. It's a really beautiful ending, and now that they don't need to recast T'Challa anymore, they at least have another T'Challa with Toussaint, if I said his name correctly. But having the mid-credit scene be Shuri finally meets Nakia and T'Challa's son, I thought that's a very beautiful mid-credit scene to cap off this movie. It really hit me in the feels. I think it's very well done, and I'm really liking just what they did with this movie as a whole. And even on second viewing, I liked it even more. And for the movie, having it end with a mid-credit scene like this, where now Shuri's Black Panther and Wakanda and Talokan are no longer in each other's throats with one another, and we find out that T'Challa and Nakia have a son that now meets Shuri, I think that's a very beautiful way to wrap up this movie. And so Phase 4 gets capped off on a very high note. I think it's the best MCU project we've had all year. As much as I did really like Ms. Marvel and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I think this is my favorite MCU project of the year. I think it's the best of the 3 movies we've had this year. And I really love what Ryan Coogler was able to do with this movie, despite all of the hard circumstances surrounding the movie. So I thought, with all the stuff that the crew and he had to deal with Chadwick's passing and the pandemic, they really delivered an amazing movie with Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and they really pulled it off so well. And this is a very worthy sequel to that first Black Panther movie, and it's one of the best additions to the franchise. So yeah, that's my spoiler review for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. What are your thoughts on it? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and tell me some stuff in spoilers for the movie that you liked. I'd love to see all that down below in the comment section. Stay tuned for some upcoming videos I have planned really soon. I got some exciting videos that will be coming your way soon, so please go stay tuned for that. And don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below. So please go do that while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button, and stay tuned for more.